She entered the arena with blood on her hands. He just wanted to fix a ship. The space station above planet Drexar floated like a silver beast in the dark sky. Inside, the air was cold, the walls were metal, and the people were not friendly, especially to humans. Ryan, the only human on the station, didn't care about the hate. He was an engineer, a quiet one. All he wanted was to fix broken ships and leave before anyone noticed him. That morning, he was deep inside the engine of a Drexar battlecruiser. His hands were black with grease. Sparks flew. He hummed a soft Earth song only he knew. Suddenly, the alarm blared. Arena challenge. Blood combat. The sound echoed through every corner of the station. Ryan froze. He looked up, confused. He wiped his hands and stepped out of the ship. Aliens were running toward the central arena. Big ones, small ones, warriors, guards, even station workers. Ryan followed slowly, just to see what was happening. When he reached the edge of the crowd, he saw her. She stood in the middle of the arena like a shadow made of fire. Her name was Kavira, a Drexar huntress, known for killing 10 enemies with one blade. Her black armor dripped with blood. Her silver eyes searched the crowd like a wolf looking for prey. "I challenge the human," she shouted. The arena went silent. Every alien turned to stare at Ryan. "What?" he whispered. Kavira pointed her blade straight at him. "You walk on our land. You fix our ships. But you do not fight. You do not bleed. That changes today." Ryan stepped back. "I'm just an engineer. I don't fight anyone." The alien crowd laughed, jeered. "Afraid, human. Weak Earth man can't even hold a blade. She'll cut you in half." Ryan looked around. There was no way out. This wasn't a normal fight. On Drexar, a public challenge couldn't be refused. If he said no, they would throw him into the pit anyway. He swallowed hard. "If I say yes, and I win, what happens?" Kavira smirked. "If you win, I will stop hunting humans. I will belong to you, body and soul." The crowd gasped. Ryan blinked. "What?" "She means she becomes your property," said a voice beside him. It was Jex, a small green alien who sometimes helped him translate. "It's an old warrior law. Win the challenge, and she must serve you." "I don't want a servant," Ryan said. "I just want peace." But it was too late. The arena door opened. A voice said, "Combat begins in 3 minutes." They took Ryan to the other side of the arena, gave him simple armor. No helmet, no sword, just a small energy rod, useless against someone like Kavira. He looked up at her across the battlefield. She was calm. Her eyes were cold. "She wants to kill me," he thought. "And I just want to fix that ship." A bell rang. The fight began. Kavira rushed forward like a storm. Fast, deadly, her blade sliced through the air. Ryan jumped back, barely missed. He didn't fight like a warrior. He moved like an engineer. He looked around, saw loose wires, a damaged shield panel, a maintenance pipe near the wall. He ran. She followed. Ryan used his small energy rod to spark a power wire. It exploded near her face. She stepped back for just 1 second. That was enough. He grabbed a tool from his belt, a magnetic grip. He ran toward the pipe and jumped. The grip held him up. Kavira swung her blade again. Missed. He used the height to drop down behind her and hit her with the rod, right in the armor joint. It shocked her. She screamed and fell. The crowd went wild. Did he just? That wasn't fighting. That was trickery. But he won. Kavira lay on the ground, breathing hard. Her blade fell. Her pride broke. Ryan walked to her slowly. "Are you okay?" he asked. She looked at him with fire in her eyes. But she didn't attack. "I lost," she said, "by Drexar law. I am yours." Ryan didn't smile. He didn't cheer. Then the first thing I say is this: stand up. You are not my property. The crowd gasped again. Kavira looked confused, angry. Then something else. A flicker of respect. Ryan turned and walked away. He didn't even look back. But Kavira followed. She followed him silently, but her eyes were always watching. Kavira didn't understand what had just happened. She had trained for war since she was a child. She had fought in the blood pits of Drexar, hunted beasts on frozen moons, and killed men twice her size. No one had ever defeated her. But today, in front of thousands, she had been beaten by a quiet human engineer. Not with strength, not with speed, with something worse: cleverness. She had tried to kill him. He had used sparks and wires. And still, when she fell, when the law declared she now belonged to him, he didn't chain her. He didn't command her. He didn't even look at her. He simply said, "You're not my property. Stand up." Then he walked away, like none of this mattered. No Drexarian male would ever do that. Kavira's pride screamed at her to strike him again, to take revenge. But something stronger, deeper, whispered, "Watch him." Ryan returned to the repair bay that night. His hands were still shaking from the fight, but he pretended he was fine. He picked up his tools and went back to work like nothing had happened. He didn't notice Kavira standing on the upper level, watching him in silence. She didn't leave. Not when the lights dimmed for night cycle. Not when the guards looked at her in confusion. Not when she felt hunger, or pain, or shame. She stood like a shadow, eyes locked on the human who had refused to own her. Hours passed. Ryan finally turned. He saw her. "You're still here?" he asked. Kavira didn't speak. She stepped down the stairs slowly. Her boots echoed in the quiet bay. Ryan wiped sweat from his face. "Look, I know this is weird for both of us. You don't owe me anything." She stared at him. "No one has ever defeated me," she said coldly. "Not once." "I didn't defeat you," Ryan replied. "I survived you." Kavira frowned. "Why didn't you take me? You had the right." "I don't take people," Ryan said. "I fix things." Kavira's eyes narrowed. "Then fix this," she whispered, placing her hand over her heart. She turned and left. The next day, Ryan visited the medical wing to get his bruises checked. Kavira was already there, sitting in the corner like a statue, watching him again. When he left, she followed. He worked on a power converter in Sector 12. She stood nearby, arms crossed, silent. He ate a protein bar for lunch. She sat across from him, not eating, not blinking. "What are you doing?" he finally asked. "I am yours," she replied, "until I understand you. You don't have to follow me." "Yes," she said, "I do." 3 nights passed. Kavira never slept. She stood outside his quarters every night, quiet, unmoving. Her armor never left her body. Her blade stayed sharp. Some of the Drexar guards whispered, "She's waiting to kill him. She's just pretending to obey. Humans don't belong here." Ryan heard the whispers. He ignored them. But one night, he woke up to a sound, a small one, like a breath, too close. He opened his eyes. Kavira stood in his room, right next to his bed. She was staring at his hands. "What are you doing?" he asked, heart racing. Kavira looked surprised. "You fixed the drone for that Drexar child yesterday." "Yeah, his drone was broken." "You didn't even ask for a thank you," she said softly. "I didn't need one." Kavira stepped back, as if confused by his answer. "On Drexar, we don't fix things for free. We take, we earn, we conquer." "Well," Ryan said, sitting up, "that's probably why everything here is broken." The next morning, Kavira followed him to the lower decks, where old fighters were stored. One of the guard bots sparked and fell to the floor. Ryan rushed to help. A Drexar soldier yelled, "Leave it. That bot is useless. But Ryan didn't listen. He opened the panel, fixed the wires, and powered it back on. The bot stood again. "Why do you fix things others throw away?" Kavira asked. "Because everything broken can be fixed," Ryan said. Kavira didn't reply. Her blade, which had once longed for his blood, now stayed at her side. Later that day, Ryan found her sitting by herself near the outer docking ring. The view of space behind her was endless, stars like quiet fires. He sat beside her. She didn't stop him. "You know," Ryan said, "I never wanted to come here." Kavira glanced at him. "My home, Earth, it's full of war too. But I came here hoping it was different." Kavira looked down. "Drexar is not a kind world." "I noticed," he said with a tired smile. A moment passed. "Why did you challenge me?" he asked. She didn't answer right away. Then she whispered, "Because if I didn't kill a human, I thought I'd stop being a warrior." Ryan nodded slowly. "And now?" Kavira looked at him. "I think I was already lost before I met you. And you didn't win by fighting. You won by being something I didn't understand." She stood. "I still don't understand you." "That's okay," Ryan said. "I don't understand myself most days either." That night, Kavira stood outside his room again. But this time, she wasn't guarding. She was simply there. And for the first time, she didn't carry her blade. They sent assassins for him. She stood in the way. The silence on Space Station Varrock was heavy, too heavy. Ryan didn't notice it at first. He was in the lower bay, fixing a power relay. Sparks lit up his face. His hands were black with dust again. He liked this part of the job. Just him and the wires. No one shouting. No one staring at him like he didn't belong. But somewhere above, danger was moving. Kavira noticed it before anyone else. She stood on the upper level, arms crossed, eyes sharp. Something was wrong with the guards today. They weren't standing in their normal spots. 2 of them were missing. Others whispered in their comms and kept looking at Ryan. And then she saw them. 3 masked Drexar assassins, cloaked in invisibility tech, moving like shadows between shadows. Their blades were not for show. Their mission was clear. Kill the human. End the shame. Silence the story of his victory. Kavira's body went cold. It was her fault. By Drexar law, she had become Ryan's, but by Drexar loyalty, she had become a traitor. She had stood in the arena and lost, then followed him like a shadow. She had been seen laughing. She had protected him with her silence. Now they wanted him dead, and her name buried with him. Below, Ryan smiled quietly to himself. He had just fixed the relay faster than expected. Maybe he was finally getting used to this alien tech. But then, the air changed. A sound, too soft. A movement, too fast. He turned and saw a shimmer in the air coming toward him. Invisibility cloak. His eyes widened. Too late to run. The blade was already falling. But it didn't reach him. With a roar, Kavira leaped from the upper level, crashing down between Ryan and the assassin. Her blade met theirs in a flash of blue light. Sparks flew. Metal screamed. Ryan fell backward, landing hard on the floor. He looked up and saw her. Kavira stood like a wall of fire, blocking him, fighting all 3 assassins at once. The fight was fast, brutal, beautiful. Kavira spun, ducked, and slashed with skill Ryan had only seen in stories. Blood hit the wall. 2 assassins fell. 1 remained. He hissed in rage. "You protect the human now." Kavira's voice was ice. "He is not like us. That is why he must live." The assassin charged, but Ryan, still on the ground, saw a loose wire and a broken panel nearby. He pulled the cord free and touched it to the metal floor just as Kavira ducked. Boom! Electric sparks exploded under the assassin's feet. He screamed and dropped. Silence followed. Only the sound of Kavira's heavy breathing filled the air. Ryan stood slowly. "You saved me," he said. Kavira didn't answer. She looked at her own hand. It was shaking. She hadn't felt fear in years, until today. A moment later, alarms rang again. This time, not for a challenge, but for a crime. Guards rushed in, guns ready. They saw the dead assassins. They saw Kavira's blade covered in blood. One of them shouted, "She has betrayed Drexar law." Kavira didn't flinch. "She broke no law," Ryan said, stepping forward. "They tried to kill me." "She is one of them," a guard snapped. "Then arrest me too," Ryan said calmly. The guards froze. Kavira looked at him in disbelief. "You would go to prison. For me. I would rather sit in a cell than watch you die for doing the right thing." That night, they weren't taken to prison. But they weren't safe either. Kavira and Ryan sat in a quiet storage room while Jex, the little green alien, patched Kavira's wounds. "Why did they come?" Ryan asked. Kavira stared at the floor. "Because I lost. And you let me live. That makes us both dangerous." "To who?" She looked up. "To the general." Ryan frowned. "General Mavok." "Yes," she said. "He trained me, raised me like a daughter. And now he wants me erased." Jex's eyes went wide. "If Mavok wants you dead, you'll never be safe again." Ryan didn't sleep that night. He sat near the window, staring out at the stars. So many, so cold. He missed Earth, missed the sound of trees, the feel of sunlight. But he didn't regret staying. Because now, he wasn't alone. Kavira sat across the room, quietly sharpening her blade. Not out of fear, but habit. After a long silence, she said, "You're not like the others. I get that a lot." "No, I mean it. You don't act like a winner. You don't act like a master. You don't act like someone who should survive in this galaxy." "That's because I don't want to win," Ryan said softly. "I want people to stop losing." Kavira stopped sharpening. She looked at him. "You confuse me, human." "You confuse me too," he said with a half-smile. A soft laugh escaped her lips. Small, barely there, but real. Suddenly, a screen on the wall lit up. A message. By order of General Mevok. The human is to be eliminated immediately. Anyone who shelters him will be charged with treason. Kavira's face turned hard. "So it begins," she said. Ryan stood. "What do we do?" She turned to him. "We fight, not with swords, but with truth. We show them what you are, who you are." "And who are you now?" Ryan asked. Kavira stepped close. Her voice was firm. "I don't belong to you. Not anymore." Ryan nodded. "I know." She smiled slightly. "But I still choose to stay." They called her a traitor. He called her a friend. The heavy metal doors slammed shut behind her. Kavira stood in chains. Her armor had been stripped, her weapons taken. Her face, usually fierce and proud, was calm now. But not because she was afraid. It was because she had expected this. The Drexar council chambers were built like a temple of war. Cold walls, sharp lights, and a raised platform where the high voices of Drexar watched her like vultures. She had once stood beside these voices as a hero. Now she was called a traitor. Kavira of House Mavok, the central voice echoed, "You are charged with treason, dishonor, and protecting the human." She didn't blink. "I protected truth." Gasps echoed through the crowd of soldiers and leaders lining the sides. "You should have killed him in the arena," the voice hissed. "Instead, you lost, and then you followed him like a slave." "I followed no one," she replied. "I chose to walk beside him." The room erupted in noise. Fury. Disgust. Silence. Another voice roared, "Where is the human now?" Right then, the door opened again. All heads turned. Ryan stepped inside. He didn't wear armor. He didn't have a weapon. His clothes were simple, still stained with grease. Yet he walked through the Drexar Council like a man on fire. One of the guards raised a weapon. "You are forbidden." "She is not alone," Ryan said, his voice calm but firm. "If you punish her, you punish me too." Kavira looked at him in shock. "Why are you here?" "I told you," he said softly. "I'd rather stand in a cell with you than walk free without you." The council buzzed with rage. One of the high voices rose to speak. His eyes burned like red coals. "You, human, are a virus. You bring weakness, shame, and softness." Ryan walked closer. "No, I bring change, and you're afraid of it." The voice snarled. "She is Drexar's best huntress, and now she is ruined." Ryan turned toward the crowd. Hundreds of alien eyes stared at him with hate, and something else. Curiosity. "Ruined?" Ryan asked. "She saved my life. She protected children. She showed mercy. If that's ruin, then your whole world needs to be ruined." The council shouted again. The walls shook with fury, but Ryan didn't stop. "Let me ask something," he said. "When she fought me in the arena, what did you expect?" "To kill you," someone muttered. "And yet I won, not by being stronger, but by being smarter. By thinking. By adapting." He looked directly at the high voices. "And that scared you." Silence. "You say Drexar is strong. Then prove it. Prove it by listening. By allowing change. By letting people choose who they are." He walked to Kavira's side. She still stood in chains. "You call her a traitor. I call her the bravest person I've ever met." Then, quietly, he said to her, "You don't need to stand alone anymore." Kavira's eyes filled with something rare, something she thought she had lost long ago. Hope. The chamber froze for a long moment. Then, a slow clap echoed. Everyone turned. General Mavok entered the room. He wore battle armor darker than space itself. His face was cold as ice. His voice was deep and calm, but every word cut like a knife. "So, this is what it has come to," he said. "My student, my daughter in war, standing beside a soft human who should have died long ago." He looked at Ryan. "You think you've won something. You've only delayed the storm." "Mavok," Kavira said, lifting her head, "I followed you since I was a child. I believed in you. But you taught me only one thing: fear." Mavok's smile faded. "Then let me teach you one final lesson," he growled. "The law of Drexar allows a final challenge. One battle. One outcome. Your fate will be decided in blood." "I accept," Kavira said. "No," Mavok replied. "He fights. The human. No armor. No tricks. Just him. And me." Gasps rippled again. Kavira stepped forward, her chains clinking. "You coward. You challenge someone who doesn't even carry a blade." "I challenge the virus," Mavok said. "If he wins, you both walk free. If he dies, you die with him." Later that night, Ryan sat quietly in the holding cell beside Kavira. Jex had tried to sneak in food, but neither of them was hungry. "You don't have to do this," Kavira said. "You'll die." Ryan looked up. "Maybe, but if I back down now, it tells everyone they were right about humans. I won't do that." Kavira clenched her fists. "I was trained to fight him, and even I never beat him." "I'm not going to beat him," Ryan said. "I'm going to surprise him." Before the final battle, Ryan stood alone in the arena once more. The crowd was 10 times larger now. Alien ships floated above the station, broadcasting the duel live across galaxies. Everyone wanted to see the human die. General Mavok stepped into the arena like a god of war. His blade was nearly as tall as Ryan. His armor was custom forged. His eyes, deadly. The bell rang. Kavira stood behind the force field, unable to help. "Come on," she whispered. Ryan didn't run. He didn't charge. He didn't lift a weapon. He walked slowly, and spoke. You trained Kavira to kill without question, but she learned something you never taught her: honor. Mivok didn't reply. He swung. Ryan ducked. Barely. He rolled, pulling something from his boot. A small blinking orb. Mivok laughed. A toy. No, Ryan said. A message. He threw the orb into the air. Suddenly, holograms lit up the arena. Images of Kavira saving children, protecting Drexar soldiers, fighting off assassins. This is the traitor you speak of, Ryan shouted. And this is what I fight for. The crowd stared in shock. Even Mavok stopped. That pause was all Ryan needed. He activated the shock ring he built into his glove. A single punch, right into Mavok's chest plate, triggered an electric surge. The general screamed, fell to one knee. Ryan stood over him. I won't kill you, he said, but I will show you. That fear is no longer your weapon. The final challenge, human vs. alien general. Silence filled the arena. It was not the silence of fear. It was not the silence of hate. It was the silence that comes after something important happens, when a whole world doesn't know what to feel. Ryan stood in the center of the ring, breathing hard. At his feet, General Mivok, the legend, the war hero, the symbol of Drexar pride, lay unconscious, defeated by a human who didn't even carry a sword. Ryan's arm shook. The shock glove on his hand sizzled and sparked. Its energy coil nearly burnt out. But he had won. Not with violence. Not with rage. He had won with heart. And with something Drexar had forgotten. Mercy. Kavira ran to him as the force fields dropped. Her steps were fast. Focused. She didn't care about the eyes watching. Didn't care what her people thought. Ryan turned and saw her. A tired smile broke across his face. You're free, he said quietly, voice weak. Kavira shook her head. No, she whispered. We're free. And she pulled him into her arms. The Drexar Council had no words. The crowds had no voice. They had all come to watch the death of a human. What they got was the death of something else. The old Drexar way. Hours later, the footage of the fight spread across the galaxy. In hidden corners of the universe, warriors sat in silence as they watched the human engineer stand tall over General Mavok. Young Drexar children replayed the moment again and again, when Ryan offered peace instead of revenge. Even on Earth, leaders who once feared Drexar saw the change and began to hope. But far away, in the shadows of a dying moon, a dark ship sat in orbit. Inside, someone else was watching. Not with hope, not with respect, but with rage. Her name was High Matron Khazar, leader of the Purge faction, a secret group within Drexar that believed in blood, war, and purity. She watched the broadcast with burning eyes. The Huntress failed, she hissed. The general fell. The council is confused. She stood and faced her warriors, dozens of assassins in black armor. Prepare the red signal. If Drexar becomes weak, then we will burn it down. Back on the station, Ryan sat in the medbay. His body ached in places he didn't know existed. Kavira sat beside him, her eyes never leaving his. You're not a fighter, she said gently. Nope, Ryan replied. Never was. But you changed everything today. He looked at her. No, we did. She looked down at his hand, cut, bruised, and still trembling from the energy surge. Slowly, she reached over and held it. Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. The Drexar Council gathered again, this time without shouting. High Voice Narrow, once a loud critic of humans, stood and cleared his throat. This station was built to prepare for war. But today, a human and a huntress taught us something new. Another voice added, perhaps peace is not weakness. Perhaps kindness is power. And for the first time in Drexar history, the Council voted unanimously to begin formal peace talks with Earth. But peace is not born without pain. The next morning, an explosion shook the outer hangars. Emergency alarms screamed. Kavira and Ryan ran toward the smoke. Fires burned through the cargo bays. Alien crew members dragged the wounded to safety. "What happened?" Ryan shouted. Jex came limping from the wreckage. It was them. The Purge faction. They sent a signal, called it the Red Warning. They want war again. Kavira's face went cold. "Kizar," she growled. "Who?" Ryan asked. "My old commander, worse than Mavak. She doesn't want change. She wants destruction." They met with the council again. High-voiced Nerl looked shaken. "We thought the fighting was over." Kavira stepped forward. "No, the real fight is just beginning." Ryan nodded. "And we're going to need help." Nerl asked, "What do you suggest?" Ryan looked around the room. His voice was steady. "We open this station to humans. Engineers, scientists, peacemakers. We work together, so the next time they attack, we don't fight as strangers. We fight as allies." The council hesitated. Then they agreed. Over the next few days, things began to change. For the first time ever, Earth shuttles docked at a Drexar station without fear. Human and Drexar teams worked side by side, rebuilding what was broken, designing new defenses, and sharing knowledge. Kavira walked through the station in full armor again, but this time, she wasn't feared. She was respected. She was no longer a huntress of blood. She was now called something new, the Guardian. One night, Ryan sat alone near the observation deck, staring at the stars again. Kavira joined him. "You're quiet," she said. "I've never seen so many stars," he replied. "And now I wonder how many of them are burning because people like Kizar won't let go of the past." Kavira nodded. "She won't stop. Not until she sees us as ashes." Ryan looked at her. "Then we'll give her something she's never seen before." "What?" "2 warriors," Ryan said, smiling, "from 2 different worlds, standing together." Kavira smirked. "We'll need a better name than that." "I'll let you decide," Ryan said. She paused, then looked at him seriously. "How about this?" She leaned in close and whispered, "Partners." Ryan looked into her eyes. "Yeah," he said, "that sounds right." She belonged to him by law, but he gave her freedom by choice. The stars over Earth were peaceful, but peace never lasts long. High above the planet, the sky cracked with flame as Kizar's warfleet arrived. 50 Drexar ships shaped like blades, powered by hate and old laws. The red signal burned bright across their hulls. They did not come to speak. They came to conquer. In the command deck of Earth's orbital station, human officers shouted commands. Sirens blared. Panic spread. "We don't have enough defenses. They're jamming our signals. They're preparing to fire." But just as fear took over, another signal appeared. One Earth had never seen before. A blue light, shaped like a spiral. The symbol of peace, the new Drexar Alliance. Kavira stood at the front of her battle cruiser, armor shining, blade ready. Beside her, Ryan wore a reinforced engineer's suit, no weapons, just a tool belt and a calm fire in his eyes. He looked over the dashboard at the massive fleet blocking Earth's sky. "So, this is how it ends." Kavira smiled. "No, this is how it begins." Behind them, dozens of Drexar ships flew in formation. Loyalists, scientists, ex-soldiers, even young warriors who believed in something greater than war. Ryan turned to Kavira. "You don't have to do this." "Yes, I do," she said. "Not because I lost to you, but because I'd finally won myself back." On Kizar's flagship, the matron stared at the growing alliance before her. "Fools," she spat. "They've mixed with humans. They've forgotten who we are." One of her generals looked nervous. "Their numbers grow, matron. If they join with Earth forces, then we'll crush them all," Kizar growled. "Begin the assault." The sky lit up red. Missiles streaked through space. Explosions rocked the black void. Earth's satellites crumbled. Defense drones tried to respond, but they were outmatched, until the Drexar Alliance fighters cut through the fire. Kavira led the charge, her voice strong over the comms. Protect Earth. Defend every ship. And remember, we do this together. Ryan stayed behind the front lines, inside a joint Drexar human command station. His hands moved fast across consoles, rerouting power, redirecting shields, and boosting communications. Every second counted. Every choice saved lives. But suddenly, the lights flickered. Power surge. Jex shouted, "They're trying to overload our core." Ryan narrowed his eyes. Not today. He ripped open a panel, sparks hitting his face. With his tools, he rewired the main generator, using a technique Earth engineers would never dare try. For 10 seconds, his fingers danced on the edge of death. Then, boom! A pulse shot through the Alliance fleet. Shields recharge. Targeting systems locked on. Drexar and Earth ships began turning the tide. Kavira's ship took fire. Alarms screamed. She didn't slow down. She activated her blade, charged through the docking bridge of Kizar's nearest warship, and jumped into hand-to-hand combat. One Drexar assassin tried to stop her. She took him down in 3 moves. Another tried to ambush her from behind. Kavira spun and knocked him cold with a single strike. "You fight like a traitor," one enemy growled. "No," she replied. "I fight like someone who finally knows who she is." Meanwhile, Ryan watched in horror as a massive red beam blocked onto Earth's surface. "They're targeting a civilian city," someone shouted. There wasn't enough time to stop it from space. Ryan picked up a mic, patched into Kavira's comm. "They're aiming at Earth. If that cannon fires, millions die." Kavira didn't respond right away. Then her voice came, calm and clear. "I'll stop it." She turned her ship sharply, straight toward the heart of Kizar's flagship. "Are you crazy?" one of her lieutenants shouted. "Yes," she said with a grin. "But I'm not afraid anymore." Kavira rammed her cruiser into Kizar's ship and jumped aboard alone. Her blade clashed with guards. She moved like a storm. And then, in the control room, she found her. Matron Kizar, towering, furious, holding a war staff made from the bones of her victims. "So, the pet returns," Kizar sneered. "I am no one's pet," Kavira replied. "You turned against your blood, your name, your people." Kavira stared her down. "No, I became my people. All of them. The weak, the kind, the strong. You only ever served yourself." The battle was brutal. Blades sang. Blood spilled. Kavira took a hit to her shoulder. Kizar roared and slammed her back. "You're finished." Kavira rose slowly, blood on her lip, fire in her eyes. "No," she said. "You are." She flipped forward, dodged the next strike, and drove her blade through the power core. The room exploded in sparks. Kizar screamed. From Ryan's view on the monitor, the flagship began to tilt. "Kavira," he whispered. "Kavira, come in." Nothing. Static. Then, her voice crackled through. "Mission complete, but I'm stuck inside." "I'm coming for you," Ryan said. "No," she replied softly. "There's no time. I'm not leaving you." A pause. Then she said, "I was yours by law, but I stayed by choice. Now you have to make a choice. Live, and keep building what we started." Ryan's hands trembled. His heart ached. He slammed his fist on the console. Then, the flagship exploded in space. A shockwave rippled through the stars. Silence followed. No more gunfire. No more missiles. Just stillness. Then, the enemy fleet retreated. The red signal dimmed. Earth was safe. But Ryan collapsed to his knees. 3 days later, a quiet ceremony was held above Earth's orbit. Drexar and Earth leaders stood side by side. A statue was placed in the middle of the garden on the Alliance station. It showed two figures, Kavira and Ryan, back to back, weapons lowered, eyes looking toward the stars. Ryan stood in front of it, alive, but different now. Jex stood beside him. "She saved us all," Jex whispered. Ryan nodded slowly. "She gave everything, for something bigger than war." But then, something happened. A ship arrived at the edge of the system. It didn't match any Drexar or Earth signature. Ryan stepped forward. The door opened, and out stepped Kavira. Alive, scared, changed. He ran to her. She didn't speak, just looked into his eyes. "I fought you." "You thought wrong," she said, then added with a half-smile, "Partners don't leave each other behind." Epilogue. Peace between Earth and Drexar continued to grow. Joint stations were built. New laws were written. And in the stars, the legend of the engineer and the huntress became more than a story. It became the foundation of a future built not on fear, but on choice, respect, and hope.